6 EU countries are intensifying calls for a bloc-wide windfall tax on oil companies as profits surge amid the war in the Middle East. Wildfires across Europe are exposing a potentially deadly threat beneath the landscape. Unexploded bombs and mines left from World Wars I and II. 6 EU countries are intensifying calls for a bloc-wide windfall tax on oil companies as profits surge amid the war in the Middle East. Finance ministers from Germany, Italy, Austria, Poland and Portugal, along with Spain's economy minister, urged Ireland to put the issue on the agenda for next month's meeting of EU finance chiefs in Dublin. The ministers called for an EU-wide framework to tax windfall profits, drawing on the temporary levy introduced in 2022 after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Beyond the proposal, Germany's finance minister Lars Klingbeil said that excessive crisis profits should be returned to consumers. Energy companies have posted major earnings as the war disrupted shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. However, the EU has not yet signaled plans for a new levy. The letter remains a preliminary draft while political divisions persist within member states, including Germany.
Germany's foreign minister has sharply criticized Russian President Vladimir Putin for stepping up his brutal war of aggression in Ukraine, pledging more aid for Kyiv. Johann Wadefull's comments during a visit to the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, on Saturday came after a series of Russian bombings that have killed nearly 30 people in Ukraine since Friday.
Putin hat die Intensität seines Krieges sogar noch erhöht. Er terrorisiert gezielt Zivilistinnen und Zivilisten, greift zivile Infrastruktur mit Raketen und Drohnenschwärmen an. Die Ukrainerinnen und Ukrainer spüren das auch hier in Kiew jeden Tag und jede Nacht. Der Juli war der tödlichste Monat für Zivilistinnen und Zivilisten seit über 4 Jahren. Das sind nicht einfach Zahlen, das sind Menschen.
Moscow's forces are currently exploiting Ukraine's chronic shortage of US-made Patriot air defense interceptors. On Saturday, Zelensky said he discussed the creation of a European anti-ballistic system with former US Special Envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg. Meanwhile, local authorities say Russian strikes in Ukraine killed at least 7 people early Saturday.
Wildfires across Europe are exposing a potentially deadly threat beneath the landscape. Unexploded bombs and mines left from World Wars I and II. Some weapons have exploded in intense heat, with blasts reported in France, Belgium, Germany and the Netherlands. In Belgium, fires have spread across former battlefields, including the High Fence, where emergency services have been adapting to the risk of buried munitions. Beyond the immediate threat to firefighters, Belgium's Explosive Ordnance Disposal Service responds to more than 3,000 calls every year and disposes of up to 250 tons of wartime munitions. Climate change is increasing the risks, researchers say, as extreme heat and drought can trigger explosives or expose weapons hidden underground. Drought has also revealed weapons in rivers and lakes. In Slovakia, falling water exposed 2 naval mines, while bombs emerged from receding waters in Hungary and Germany. Burials continue in Seta for migrants who died during a mass crossing from Morocco 3 weeks ago. A total of 18 migrants were buried on Friday at the Muslim cemetery of Sidi Mbarek, according to Spanish media reports. Spanish authorities recorded 82 deaths on their side of the border. Beyond Friday's burials, more migrants were expected to be buried over the weekend in the coming days at a rate of around 10 per day. The migrants were buried according to Muslim rites, with bodies placed facing Mecca and covered with soil. Spanish and Moroccan authorities have used fingerprints and DNA samples to identify victims. However, reports differ on the number of identified victims since relatives have struggled to cross into Ceuta to provide samples. None of the victims has so far been transferred to Morocco, which has refused to accept them. Each grave was marked with a number in case relatives eventually claim the remains.